My name is Nicklas Keijser. Come from Stockholm. My big pleasure to be here in Munich, first time. So really enjoy the food and the beers. Fantastic. And hopefully next time there will be B-sides during the Oktoberfest. It would be cool to be there. But maybe I don't know. I was joking around. Maybe everybody will be sort of hangover. So maybe it's good about. Well, I'm going to talk about. I do a lot of incident response. I do malware analysis. And this comes from a real incident I did, where the threat actor had sort of messed up, and how we can leverage that both for threat intelligence and then for how to utilize that also in the incident response. So I was called into this incident, and was sort of this. The threat actor hadn't sort of encrypted stuff yet, but they were on their way of encrypting. And I got sent this from my colleague. This is was an agent and was packed. The ones who sorry for the feedback. The ones who do malware analysis, a lot of malware are packed, so you need to sort of unravel it to get sort of the content out of it. And this was sort of packed in Delphi, which is a bit of a nightmare. But though, while I was unpacking this rat, I found this very interesting string. It says HTTPS, and it was an IP address, and it said list.txt, and file upload. This looks juicy, but you always need to be careful. Is it too obviously, or could it be something out of real interest? Yeah, of course, you need to memes. So I sort of downloaded the whole thingy, and it turned out to be almost 5 gigabytes of threat actor tooling, which was kind of interesting. So this is sort of how it looked like. So it was an open directory, and the rat sort of had this capability of downloading more tools and then unpacking it itself. So it's kind of like a modular, but doing so also they forgot to their own Opsec, so which kind of led me to, let's download the whole directory and see what we can find. And if you stick with me to the end, this will sort of actually led to some really cool findings, and I will show you some tricks how we can leverage this stuff. So let's just looking at the tools. And they have one called AVF something. AV, they don't, threat actors, they don't really like antivirus solutions. So they have this kind of tooling with these things. What does it contain? It has this kind of thingy. And there's a lot of, how to disable volume shadow copies. Threat actors hate volume shadow copies, so ransomware actors. What I thought was interesting about this one is that usually in ransomware we see this stuff built into them, but they had sort of separate scripts. So we got everything for free here. And from a sort of, also I was talking with Sylvia here, as a detection engineering. If you see these commands running, that's probably you should call the incident response immediately. Any of these commands, so that detection engineering it's a very, very good trigger for something bad is probably happening in your environment. Especially see all of them coming. That's I would say 99.999999 something, 5 sigma true positive. Also found this thing here called def.vbe, and VBE, that's sort of a binary Visual Basic script. And when you see stuff like this, what do? Also NVSU was one of the sponsors. You Google it and see, has Didier Stevens done something for this? And of course he has. So you just download this tool and it deobfuscates it for you. And but it's even more disabling volume shadow copies. So I guess we will distribute these slides afterwards. So this is more from the detection engineering point of view. This stuff is it's keep an eye out for. And they also like stopping things. This is also one of the things we see when you do ransomware investigations. Let's say, good is not the correct word. Let's say how you should do it before encrypting is you should stop things before otherwise things will break. So you should also see this stuff built into the ransomware. But here in this case, we had a script as well. So I mean, for the detection engineering, take this, especially if they all come in a row. You probably have a visit from someone you're not expecting. I also found this tooling, so moving on to the next sort of folder, this thing called ClearLock. I never heard about this before. What do? We Google it, and turns out the Dharma ransomware gang, they're like using this tool as a tooling before encrypting. What it actually does, it locks the screen for the user, but the activity can go on in the background. So it's a way of sort of locking out any sort of interaction with the tool. And I started digging into this one. I thought it was kind of interesting. What can we find about this? So what it actually does, I clicked on it, and then it locks the screen, and it put in a password. Okay. You see the screen is in the background still, but if I try to do anything else, just tell me I need a password. But you see there's like an ini file there. So if I edit this ini file, I could see I could hack this little thing here. So Nicklas was here, was greeted here instead of, typing the password. So that's interesting. I can interact with this kind of screen locker. And what else it doesn't show that very clearly, sorry about that. Down here it says password, and it's some kind of a hex stringy. So what could that be? Well, first, this one was actually written in Auto-IT, which was interesting. Auto-IT is like an old compiler, though that thing is actually coming back now. It's side note from this. Qbot has disappeared, and we have another gang on the rise called Darkgate. And they download Auto-IT compiler on the computer before compiling the malware. So that's the interesting part of being a malware analyst. You need to look into this old stuff as well, because the threat actors love to use this. But it is compiled in Auto-IT. And there's actually this decompiler. So this one called myauto.2exe. I can actually decompile the code and get it in clear text. So it looks like this. And if we start looking at this, there's something very interesting up here. We have something called constant crypt key. I am Mr. Ed ! What could that be? The thing is, string encrypt, that is actually an RC4 encryption. So this is the RC4 key that's built into this tool. So if anyone gets hacked by this one, you can grab that hex code from in the password, RC4, decrypt it with the I am Mr. Ed. So if anyone runs into Dharma, it's how to unlock this screen. Also, I found this kind of Easter egg. It says Easter egg function, and a lot of hex code. So what could this be? It's there, so I'm curious. Let's see. And I put it into CyberChef, which is a fantastic tool from the NCS UK. And if there's anyone here aspiring to become a malware analyst, I would say CyberChef and learning regex. It's regex is this kind of old wizard. I'm 45, so I'm becoming one of those old wizards. Thingy that you can do a lot of magic with. So with some regex and some CyberChef, we can actually figure it out. Decrypt this hex codes, and it says. So actually, if I type in Michelangelo into this ClearLock thingy, it will actually give me back combat cold cut. So if as a feedback, if I put in Donatello, it gives me Bossa Nova, Cherry Nova. Does it ring a bell for someone? If I put in Splinter, it says Kawabanga. So the developer actually really enjoys Ninja Turtles. So this is there's an Easter egg. Even ransomware actors seems to have humor. Moving onwards, I found this file as well, elsas.exe. Does it look like Elsas? Yes, Elsas. There's a little hint up there. Clear log by xhacker 01, and it's in Russian. If you Google this, you end up on this forum where it's try to sell this tool. And Google Translate can do this. So it is actually like a tooling that clears the log. And what it does is sort of, it creates these VBS scripts and then clear the logs. Also a kind of, I mean, this is prone to false positives, but still something to keep an eye on as a detection engineer, like if this command starts running, probably something is happening in the environment. A bunch of these files, now we're moving on to the rest of the files. They were actually protected by password, zip files. And sort of without knowing the password, can I still figure out what files are there? And the answer is kind of yes. And I'm going to show you that little trick that I figured out. If you look on a zip file, it actually has this kind of CRC32 hash, which is a more sort of hash for file integrity. So it's a kind of a MD5-ish thingy. So it's not like academically correct, but it's, it's a certain thingy that sort of it gives a hint, a high sort of probability hint. If you combine it with a file size and with the file name, and if they all three match up, I'm quite convinced it's the same file. So I can actually do that. So if I do hash what I did is I Googled this hash and this tooling, and then I compare the hash CRC32, and if I get the same, I know I have the same file. So then I know that's the tooling. What I did is kind of one-liner. So I iterated through all the files that were zip encrypted and sort of getting the file name, the file size, and the CRC32 hash. And by doing this, I could figure out all the tooling without actually knowing the password. It's even though just with the metadata alone, we can figure out the tooling. Though, if we move into the more, let's say, juicy part of this. During the incident, I was... the thing I was investigating was called... was an agent, and the agent was actually called, this installer.exe. So it has these two binaries in the same folder called agents. So I start looking at the first one. So when I say agents, is it this one? No, it's not. Sorry. The first agent, though, the one called installer, that was the one I found in the environment. And that was actually known by VirusTotal, but sort of by having the sort of installation package, I could install it on my own investigation system and then generate all the IOCs from it. So I got this sort of framework. I didn't need to reverse it. I could just install it and see what it does. Which sort of, this was stuff in the environment. So that's sort of IOC generation. Though, the other one, the other agent, what could that be like? Because I was working in this incident, and the ransomware, or the threat actor, which was most likely a ransomware actor, they hadn't managed to get ransomware yet. So we were like, just in the sort of pre-ransomware stage. They had this other thing called agents. We hadn't seen it in the incident, but if it was sort of placed next to this one we had in the incident, it looks a little bit too interesting to leave alone. So I started looking at it, and if I put it into VirusTotal, it gave me just 4 hits from minor. Well, I had McAfee, but that's the heuristic one. So is this malware or not? Like 4 out of 60 something. It's something in between. Like it's more likely to be false positive. So what is it? But looking at it, just running it, see what it does, install all this stuff. So it's still like, what is it? It doesn't make any... Well, it is some kind of agent, but is it malware or is it not? The thing is, it is this thing, it is program. So it's a remote access tool called IntelliAdmin. Before this incident, I had never heard about this tool. And that tool actually was created by a guy called Steve Weissman, but he passed away like 6 years ago. So this sort of tooling still like lingers on the internet, just keep on living, but are being abused now by threat actors. And sort of what we're seeing also is that threat actors, they start using legitimate remote access tooling instead of rats, because it's not malware by say. And sort of, we have seen like Splashdot, we've seen TeamViewer, other stuff like that as well. So, and yeah, in this case, because there's no development, it's kind of dead remote access tool. It's just be very efficient as a rat, more or less. And yeah, I installed it, and the interesting part here, while doing like this, downloading this agent and analyzing it on the side, we could generate all the IOCs, like, okay, this is the IP it's talking to, this is... We could actually, by doing so, we actually identified the threat actor's backup door into the system, which was undiscovered yet. So by doing this sort of failure with the Opsec, we could actually find their backup way into the system. So we could kick them out. Probably didn't understand how we found them, but by doing, because they left their tool on open directory. And I did this kind of little bit, this is my little bit sort of 15 seconds of Twitter fame. I did this list of remote access tools that are abused by threat actors. So I just made a big list, and sort of it was picked up by a bunch of people. And the people at what's the name again? Synac, they did this really good blog post based on that. And I think that's sort of something as a community we could sort of. It would be cool to have this kind of list of remote access tools that are abused by threat actors. So I think there's someone else, interested in doing this research, please reach out. Though you can actually do some more clever things with this sort of discovery. And this is how the panel looks like for the Intel admin. So this is the thing you're greeted with the threat actor had as their sort of C2 backend. And the ones who attended the OSINT, there's a fantastic tool called Showdown. You can, if I just type in the IP of this remote admin tool, this is sort of a strategy I do as a malware analyst when I try to pivot into discovering other sort of infrastructure from the threat actors. I put it into to Showdown and it's like, okay, is there anything that's unique with this one compared to anything else? And if you look down there, it says set cookie IA _ session. And IA stands for Intel admin. So what I could do then is I just put it in as a search in Showdown, set cookie IA session ID, and then, whoop, I get all the C2s. There's 190 now when I did this one, this slide. This is like a week ago or something. There are probably a few false positive ones here. I guess there are, some legitimate cases where they use still anti-admin. I would though guess 70% of them are proper C2 stuff. So, if you have an environment you're surveilling, anyone talking with one of these IPs, I would, definitely look into that thing and see, okay, probably there's an incident going on right now. Looking at that other rat, that looked like that. What can we do with this? First of all, if there's any web developer here, this is beautiful, isn't it? It's web development 101, back from the 90s. But you see, there's a browse thingy there where you can upload files and thingy. Though you can leverage Showdown in a quite clever way here, because when you look on one of these pages, what Showdown does is actually it gives a hash out of the page, sort of the structure of the page, and it hashes it. So I can search for identical pages, which I did as well, and for this one I get 8 hits, and this one I would say 100% sure this is bad stuff. So when talking to any one of these IPs, that's definitely bad things going on. Summary. So, are we on time? We're quite good, yeah? One of the things I do as a reverse engineer is like I try to figure out the weaknesses in the stuff they build, because they are prone to do sort of stuff. They need sort of speed, because if you look on the ransomware actors, they encrypt a lot, and by doing so, they need a lot of automation. By doing a lot of automation, they also stuff becomes repetitive, and then by doing as I did, like with a hash, for instance, there you can figure out what's their stuff as well. So that's like leverage that while they use this kind of automation, that can be actually used against them. So that's sort of one of the takeaways. And as we have this kind of TTP, which they love to use the tooling. They get used to one set of tooling and start repeating it. So building on detection engineering, I think, is super important here, because by doing so, they catch stuff. Yeah, I work at a SOC in Stockholm, and we sort of leverage that thing in, for instance, script engines, reaching out to the internet. We do find a lot of interesting stuff there, for instance. So that's another key takeaway here, like detection engineering, catch this stuff early on. Finally, like the blue team always win. So that's sort of, we're one against the threat actor here. The customer never get ransomware. So I thought there was a win for the blue team. So, with that said, any question? And thank you very much for telling me. Thank you.
So, John? Okay, cool. We have actually 5 minutes for questions. Any questions? Let me step a bit back to see you better.
Hi, thank you for the talk. Did the threat actor became aware that you downloaded their tools?
I don't think so, but I mean, now I've been talking about it publicly. Now they probably know. So, so like, I'm from just guessing. We don't know actually who the ransomware actor is, though. The thing is, like, I think this is like a mid-tier threat ransomware actor. So let's say we have 100, or let's say we normalize it to 100 threat actors. I think this is like place 67, or it's not like the worst one, not the best one, but it's like below average. So they might have, seen this talk and figured it out, but I don't think they figured it out when we did it, sort of.
Maybe
one more question there.
Where?
Thanks. Thanks for the great presentation. Now that you mention it, what would be the worst screw up that you have seen, like the worst threat actor?
Screw up. Oh. Well, I mean, okay, let's. We actually did a case quite recently, and it was a Lockbit, and they're still using Lockbit 2.0, and it doesn't make sense to me, like, because they have new ones. I'm glad they do, because they screw up. But yeah, otherwise I've seen like one of the cases I did earlier on. They started using AD-find, and they was typing. You could see in the command line they were typing AD-find something. And after like 10 tries, you could see AD-find --help. So like they don't know their own tooling. That's also like one of the things. Also like we have seen like when they actually ransomware. The first server they ransomware is the server they sit on, so only one server gets ransomware and the rest is left alone. So they kind of go off their own branch as well. So, and that's also like I hope like one of the takeaways from this talk, and if you saw my colleague Alexander as well, like actors do a lot of screw ups, and that's sort of we as defenders can leverage that against them, and also like take away this. Let's say like for instance, CrowdStrike make this sort of more like villain pictures out of threat actors. I think that's a bit wrong, because they're not like cool people. They are, bad people doing bad things to the other ones. So by showing this, I think we maybe can take a bit away of that aura of them being kind of cool villains. That was a good question.
Here was also a question.
Thank you for the talk. I just have this silly question. So, do threat actors reuse the ransomware they install? Do they reuse the ransomware software? And if so, is the decryption process do they for every victim do they change it slightly, or how does it work?
Well, it depends on because we're up in the X amount of 100 different threat actors now. So it depends case by case. Usually the ransomware itself, if this belongs to a family, that doesn't change too much over time. But there's so many of them now, and also we have this kind of more as a service model. So, for instance, Lockbit, they just buy the ransomware. So one Lockbit incident is probably a complete set of other people than the first one, because they buy sort of the dump site service and the ransomware. So if we move aside a little bit from tooling, of course there's a lot of reuse of tooling. They have this they learn a set of tooling and they like to reuse it because they need to move fast. So they use what they are accustomed with. So.
Thank you for the talk. Just maybe a quick question. In such situations where maybe you're facing a bit more advanced threat actor, or they do maybe some anti-debug shenanigans, and you're going to be stuck with, it's bad, but you don't know the details. How do you approach that? Do you decide that only report your IOCs in a way, even though these are not you don't have really clear evidences of what's there?
Yeah, it's happened several times that I get stuck. It's so obfuscated and so much anti-debugging. Being I just run the stuff and see what happens, and remove all tooling and have a system without any tooling. Run it and do memory forensics on it.
Yeah, but my question
correlated with other telemetry.
The question was more related to if you decide to disclose the information that you know to help prevent it, you actually you could lead into them knowing that you're actually debugging them. So how do you approach that? Do you decide to go and disclose the information, or do you keep it until you dig deeper until you find something? Do you have a time limit?
When we're in incidents, it's usually they are ransomware or about to be ransomware, or they have a threat actor in the environment. And as a malware analyst, it's more being you just need a triage. So let's say C2, I would say, is the most important. I give that immediately to the incident response team, so we could block it. So and then I don't understand maybe the whole mechanics of the malware, but I have enough for them to stop the intrusion. So I always give away the stuff immediately. So.
Congrats with the case. It probably was the Pisa ransomware group. They're funny guys, and they also into Terminator, because a lot of Easter eggs. But my question is, as you download all the tools, all the list of the tools, have you seen any legitimate tools that they used?
Yeah. They did there was a bunch of 7-zip was there. There were more this kind of some tooling to see how much disk utilization was used. There were a couple of ones as well. Google Chrome they had as well. They need a spare web browser. So they had this kind of bunch, because the rat itself could sort of download additional things to it. So they were both mostly bad, but a few good ones as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.